depleted, nothing of it is left. We learn in the Quran that لَنَفِدَ الْبَحْرُ قَبْلَ أَن تَنْفَدَ كَلِمَاتُ رَبِّي. That if the kalimat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were to be written, and the pens were made of the trees of this earth, and all of the oceans and the seas were made into ink, and from that you would write the kalimat of Allah, then what would happen? لَنَفِدَ الْبَحْرُ. The seas would be depleted. They would be exhausted. All of the water would be consumed. نَفِدَ. قَبْلَ أَن تَنْفَدَ كَلِمَاتُ رَبِّي. Before the kalimat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala come to an end. So basically, nafad is when something is completely exhausted, it's used up, it's finished, it comes to an end. So anything that you have, it will eventually run out. It will eventually expire. Any bottle that you have, any food that you have, any piece of furniture that you have, any piece of clothing that you have, anything that you have, it will eventually come to an end. You have a car, it will eventually end up in the junkyard. You have a house, it will eventually be demolished. Because everything of this dunya is temporary. Everything of this dunya is short-lived. And anything that is limited, it will eventually come to an end. It will not remain forever. Eventually it will expire. Eventually it will run out. It cannot remain eternally. So مَا عِنْدَكُمْ يَنْفَدْ. Anything that you have eventually will come to an end. Just think about it. People who lived in the same places that we're living in 50 years ago, 100 years ago, where are their houses? Maybe you see a few of them still standing, and some of them, they're gone. And those that are standing today, what was in those houses before? Where is all that stuff? I'm sure those houses were full. Where are they today? Where are all those things? Gone, finished, expired, thrown away, recycled. مَا عِنْدَكُمْ يَنْفَدْ. Anything that you have is going to be finished. وَمَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. But that, what is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning the khaza'in of His rahmah, the storehouses of His mercy, or whatever is with Allah, meaning what Allah has secured, has prepared for the hereafter. That is baqin. That is everlasting. That is eternal. Baqin is actually baqi. It is ism fa'il from the root letters baqafiyah, from the word baqa. And baqa is to last, to remain. So what is with Allah is going to last. Why? Because there is no decline to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nor is there any decline to the treasures that are with Him. The treasures that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owns, there is no decline to them. They will never come to an end. What do we learn from the hadith? That if all the people became extremely righteous, and if they were to be given everything that they demanded, every person was given every wish of his, every wish was fulfilled, would that reduce the treasures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It would not reduce at all. Because مَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ بَاقٍ. Whatever is with Allah is eternal. It is never ending. It never comes to an end. وَلَنَجْزِيَنَّ الَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا. And surely we will definitely reward those people who did sabr. Where did they do sabr? In the dunya. On what? On obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Refraining from His disobedience. Refraining from all those things that would upset Him. In the previous ayat, if you think of it, what did we learn? We learned about the importance of fulfilling promises, treaties, contracts. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that do not sell the covenant of Allah for a petty price, for a thamanan qalilan. Because if you think about it, anything that you obtain by cheating someone, anything that you obtain illegally by disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how long is it going to last? How long is the pleasure going to last? Not for too long. Because it is going to yanfad, it is going to run out eventually. But what is with Allah is eternal. But those people who do sabr, sabr on what? That even if they have less, they are content with it. Even if they have a little bit, they are satisfied with it. That if an opportunity to sin comes right before them, they do sabr, they control themselves, they don't fall for it. If they have the opportunity to deceive someone, to cheat someone, And to get samanan qalilan in return, they do sabr, they control themselves. So those people who do sabr, Allah will definitely reward them, أَجْرَهُمْ, their reward, بِأَحْسَنِ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ, according to the best that they had been doing. If you think about it, every person performs deeds. And all of those deeds are of various levels. Some deeds, they're excellent. Think about it, your salah. Sometimes you pray salah and you feel so good afterwards. You had so much khushu'. You felt as though that's how every salah of yours should be. Isn't it so? But at the same time, you pray salah and you wonder if it was even accepted. Because you tried so hard to have khushu', but your heart, your mind kept going elsewhere. So we see that deeds are of various levels. But those people who do sabr, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? That their reward is going to be according to the best deeds that they have done. It's going to be according to the best deeds that they have done. Generally what happens? Things are averaged out. Like for example, if you've studied in a particular school for a term, and you have taken certain tests, certain number of assignments, at the end what happens? All the numbers are taken and they're totaled out. And sometimes you have a test on which you did excellent, and at the same time you did a test on which you did very poor. Now what you did really good, that is going to be affected because of your poor performance somewhere else. But we see that those people who do sabr constantly, which deeds are going to be selected? The ahsan deeds. And according to them, they're going to be given the reward. So those people who do sabr are going to be given their reward according to the best that they had been doing. We see that this dunya, the life of this world, it is for a limited amount of time. Every person who comes to this dunya, eventually, he leaves. No person comes to this dunya and remains forever. Every person has a limited amount of time in this world. So the time of every person and the time of every object even in this dunya is limited. Every person and every object, its lifetime is limited. Every person who is born, he draws closer to his death as each day passes. Why? Because the countdown has begun from the day he was born. From the day he was born, he is going closer towards his death. Likewise, every single thing of this dunya, anything that is bought, anything that is made, it is used day in and day out, and eventually it comes to an end. Think about how many times you've bought bottles of various condiments, various jams, etc. Every time you go to the grocery store, or every other time, you have to buy another one. And you see it running out in your refrigerator, on your kitchen table. You see it coming to an end, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us the reality of our life through these things. That everything that you bring, eventually it comes to an end. Isn't it? Eventually it ends up in the garbage. Eventually it is used up. Similarly, your life will also come to an end. And if the things don't end up before you end, then what's going to happen? Eventually you're going to die. And when you die, those things are meaningless for you. Because even if they remain once you're gone, how can you use them? How can they be of benefit to you? You cannot consume them at all. So everything of this life is temporary. And what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared for the hereafter, that is baqin. That is eternal. What has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prepared for the hereafter? Paradise. The reward that Allah has prepared is Jannah. Jannah will remain without interruption and without any end. Everything in Jannah, in paradise, is going to be eternal. What do we learn? It is Jannatu Adnin, of eternity. Khalidina fiha abada. What does that show? Forever. That the blessings of the hereafter, the pleasures of the hereafter, the pleasures that are enjoyed in Jannah, they're eternal. They're never going to be interrupted. They're never going to expire. They're never going to come to an end. Life is not going to end. Youth is not going to end. And blessings are not going to end. We learn in Surah Hud, ayah 108, عَطَاءً غَيْرَ مَجْذُوذ, that the reward of the hereafter is a bestowal that is uninterrupted. غير مجذوذ. Similarly in Surah Sad, ayah 53 and 54, we learn هذا ما توعدون ليوم الحساب إن هذا لرزقنا ما له من نفاد. That is what you, meaning the righteous, are promised for the day of account. Indeed, this is our provision. For it there is no depletion. It will never be depleted. It will never run out. So, what is the lesson in this for us? That a person should not busy himself collecting the things of this dunya. Because no matter what you collect, eventually it's going to end or you are going to end. Your relationship, your companionship with the things of this world is temporary. It's not eternal. Therefore, don't spend your life collecting these things and serving these things and looking after them. Rather, spend your life in depositing what you love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if you deposit that with Allah, then it's going to be eternal. What do we learn? That وَمَا أَنفَقْتُم مِّن شَيْءٍ فَهُوَ يُخْلِفُهُ. Whatever you spend in His cause, Allah will compensate it. Meaning He will bring about what is better than it. He will give you something that is better in the hereafter. And everything that you spend in the way of Allah, تَجِدُوهُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. You will find it with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We learn that Aisha radiallahu anha, she relates that once she had a goat slaughtered. And she distributed the meat among the poor people and also among the relatives. So, majority of it was distributed. And she kept only some of it for her house, so that she could eat it, so that the Prophet ﷺ could eat it. So what happened? When the Prophet ﷺ came, he asked as to how much meat was left. So Aisha radiallahu anha replied that she had distributed everything except one piece of the shoulder cut. That's what she had kept for herself. So the Prophet ﷺ said that apart from the piece of shoulder, all of the meat was saved. That everything that you gave, all of that was saved. And whatever you kept with yourself, that has not been saved. Everything that you gave to others, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it has been deposited for you where? In the hereafter. And what you kept for yourself, what you ate and consumed yourself, that has not been deposited for the hereafter. So what do we learn? If a person keeps everything in this dunya for himself, he spends his life consuming these things, collecting these things, then they are temporary, his relationship with them is going to be temporary. But if he deposits them in the hereafter, if he deposits them with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if he gives it in charity, if he gives it fi sabilillah, then in reality what is he doing? He is making those things eternal for himself. Because he will be given something by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is going to be baqin, that is going to be eternal. It's never going to be consumed. But who can do this? Those people who have sabr. Only a person who has sabr can be content with less. Only a person who has sabr can give away something that he loves today for his hereafter. Only a person who has sabr can accept delayed gratification. A person who does not have sabr, what does he want? He wants to be rewarded immediately. He wants to enjoy immediately. But a person who is patient, what does he say? Right now, I will make do with less, but for later, I want more. I can delay my reward. I can delay the pleasure. I can delay the gratification. Who can do this? The one who has sabr. Only such a person can do this. Which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرَهُمْ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. Surah Az-Zumar, ayah number 10. That indeed the patient, they will be given their reward without any account. Meaning unlimited reward they will be given. Why? Because of their sabr. Because of their patience. And if we see this in dunya, that many times people will make do with less. Why? Because they want something better later on. Isn't it so? Like for example, a person will compromise on the size of his house. Why? So that he can save more, so that later on he can buy a house for his family. Whereas if he's spending more money right now, then he will not be able to afford a house later on. Similarly, If a person is investing his money into buying something in order for the money to grow, then he has to do sabr. If he has $1,000, he can go enjoy those $1,000. But one is that he invests it in something, in some business, so that later on he can get more. Who can do this? A person who has sabr. Those people who do sabr, only they will get their reward according to the best that they have been doing. And if you think about it, the life of this dunya is a constant test. It's a constant trial. We learned earlier that even through our contracts, our promises, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests us. That once we have made one promise, we're offered with another opportunity. It comes right before us. Now it's up to us whether we keep that promise or we break it for the sake of that worldly benefit. This world is constantly a test. Now what is it that keeps a person firm on obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's sabr. So a person who does sabr in this dunya, don't think that his sabr will be wasted. Allah will reward him. Man amila salihan. Whoever does righteous action, whoever performs good deeds, whoever does righteousness. And what is salih? Salih is that which is right and proper, that which is good. So any person who does salih deed, min zakarin, from a male, aw unsa, or a female. Meaning whether this person is a man or a woman. Zakar, dhal kafra, and unsa, hamza, noon, sa. Whether that person is a man or a woman, regardless of gender. وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ. But there is a condition. And what is that condition? That he must be a believer. This person must be a believer. So 3 things are mentioned over here. Righteous deeds. Secondly, gender doesn't matter. Thirdly, Iman is necessary. So if a person does righteousness with Iman, only then it is accepted. If a person performs good deeds with Iman, only then those good deeds are going to be worthy of some reward. And gender does not matter over here. What does this show to us? That yes, men and women are different. Biologically, emotionally, mentally. In different ways, they're completely different. Their roles are different. What is expected of them is different. Sometimes when it comes to religious obligations, even they are slightly different. Depending on gender, they're slightly different. They vary. However, when it comes to reward for good deeds, there is no difference. When it comes to recompense for the good deeds that they have performed, there is absolutely no difference. It doesn't mean that just because a person is a male, he prayed salah, he will get more reward. Or just because a person is a woman and she gave sadaqah, she will get more reward compared to a man. No. What is looked at? Iman, effort, sincerity. These things are considered. Gender is not considered when it comes to recompense, when it comes to reward or punishment. So, man amila salihan min zakarin aw unsa wa huwa mu'minun. But Iman is certainly a condition. Then what is the reward for such a person? That فَلَنُحْيِيَنَّهُ. So surely we will definitely make him live. We will give him a life. What kind of a life? Hayatan, a life that is tayyibah, that is good, that is pleasing. وَلَنَجْزِيَنَّهُمْ. And surely we will definitely reward them. أَجْرَهُمْ, their reward. بِأَحْسَنِ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. Again, according to the best that they had been doing. According to the best deeds that they used to perform. So what's the reward of a person who does amal salih with Iman? The promise of Allah is that such a person will be given a good life to live. نُحْيِيَنَّ. From the root letters, ha-ya-ya. Hayat. And what is hayat? Life. And نُحْيِيَنَّ. We will definitely make him live a life that is hayatun tayyibah. Where? Where will this good life be? First of all, in this dunya. In this dunya, a person will be granted a good life to live. What does it mean by that? That a person will have a lot of blessings? That a person will have a lot of riches? That a person will be very wealthy? He will never suffer from any harms, any illness? No. That's not the case. Hayatan tayyibah means that a person will be content, that he will be happy, that what he will do is going to be correct and proper. What he will eat is going to be halal, because it is tayyib, good. So his food is going to be halal. What he's going to wear is going to be halal. His actions are going to be good. They're going to be beneficial. They're going to be productive. Similarly, he will have afiyah. He will have well-being. And he will also have kifaya, sufficiency. That a person is content with whatever he has. He will have ar-rida bil-qada. He will have happiness and contentment and satisfaction with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The actions that he performs in this dunya, they will be productive. Because many times what happens? People do certain actions, but there is no barakah in them. There is no barakah. People spend so much time, so much money, but at the end they get nothing. They get no benefit out of it. But a person who does amal salih with iman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises him a good life in this dunya. Secondly, hayatan tayyibah also refers to a good life in barzakh. Meaning, after the life of this dunya, until the day of judgment. After a person has died, the first stage of akhirah will be a life that is tayyibah. Because remember that the grave is either rawdah min riyadul jannah, either it is a garden from the gardens of paradise, or it is a pit from the pits of hellfire. So in the barzakh, he will have a good life. He will be happy, he will be content, he will be satisfied. And thirdly, hayatan tayyibah also refers to a good life where? In the hereafter, in Jannah. That a person will be of the successful ones. The su'ada, sa'id, those who are successful, not those who are unlucky. فَلَنُحْيِيَنَّهُ حَيَاةً طَيِّبَةً وَلَنَجْزِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْرَهُمْ بِأَحْسَنِ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. And a person will also be given good reward for the deeds that he had been doing. Where? In this dunya, as well as the hereafter. So we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a lot to give. It's not that the reward is limited to the hereafter, or it's limited to the dunya. He can give at both places. He can give in dunya, in barzakh, and also in the hereafter. It's up to us how much we want. This is why we should always make dua. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Because that is success. So we see that hayatan tayyibah in the life of this dunya is a reward for a person who does amal salih with iman. And again, hayatan tayyibah is not just related to a person's outer state, but it has to do with a person's inner state, inner well-being. Not just physical well-being, but also emotional, spiritual well-being. In this surah, if you look at it, many blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been mentioned. That so many blessings Allah bestows on people. To some, Allah has given more, and to others, Allah has given less. Now, it does not mean that a person who has been given more, a person who has more of these blessings, he is certainly righteous. And a person who has been given less blessings, he is not that righteous. That is not the criteria. Happiness is not determined by what you have. Happiness has to do with the state of the heart. It has to do with contentment. And a person who obeys Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will be happy in his heart. He will be content with whatever Allah has given to him. Whether it is limited, whether it is very little, or it is a lot. Because he will focus on every single blessing that Allah has given him. He will not just count the figures that he has, the numbers, the number of money that he has, but what will he look at? That alhamdulillah, I have wealth, I have fresh air to breathe, the rain is coming down from the sky for my benefit, I have fresh food to eat. He will look at all of these blessings. So we see that hayatan tayyibah has to do with being positive, with being happy, with being content. It includes optimism. It includes peace, tranquility, contentment, ghina, satisfaction. Not that a person is constantly greedy for more. And we see from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ as well, that the Prophet ﷺ said, Riches, al-ghina, does not mean that a person has great amounts of wealth. Being rich does not mean that a person has great amounts of wealth. But riches is self-contentment. Ghina is self-contentment. It is a satisfaction of the heart. It is when a person is happy with whatever Allah has given him. He is satisfied with that. And when a person is satisfied, only then he can be happy. Only then he can do good to others. Only then he can be patient. Only then he can be constant on obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only then he can refrain from disobedience. And if a person is unhappy, if a person is always counting, what is it that I don't have, the things that he's missing in his life, then he cannot be motivated to do good. So فَلَنُحْيِيَنَّهُ حَيَاةً طَيِّبَةً is contentment, satisfaction, being positive, not that a person has abundant wealth. Because if you look at it, all the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even they underwent a lot of hardship, physical hardship, financial hardship. They went through all of that. So it doesn't mean that if a person has less, he is disobedient or he is sinful. On him is the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if a person has more, Allah is extremely happy with him. Because you see many people who are going through so many hardships, but they're happy. They're fine. And there are only a few people, those lucky ones, who are given this positive thinking even when they're going through extreme hardship. There was a friend of mine who herself, she fractured her foot. Her mother had a surgery at the same time, and her father lost his job. And the surgery that was here, they were living in Canada at that time, and they didn't have Canadian citizenship. So you can imagine the costs of that surgery. And you can imagine if the father didn't have a job. And you can imagine if the daughter had fractured her foot, even she couldn't work. But if you met them, they were the happiest people you ever met. If you went to their house, they would make you smile. They would make you laugh. This is hayatun tayyibah. That a person is content. It doesn't mean that a person is careless, or that a person has become heedless, or his heart has become very hard. No. It means that a person is content and satisfied with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is happy with whatever Allah has given him. And he is grateful for what he has. He's not counting the things that he does not have. He counts the things that Allah has given him. And this is what makes a person more obedient. Because remember the hadith that whoever Allah wishes good for, yusibhu. Allah puts him to trial. Because when a person is put to trial, then what happens? Either his goodness comes out, or the evil that is in his heart, that comes out. And on the contrary, a person who turns away from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because over here what is mentioned? The person who amila salihan with iman, he will have a good life. But if a person turns away from amal salih, he turns away from the Quran, he turns away from iman, what kind of a life will he live? He will live a life that is constricted, that is unhappy, that is full of unhappiness and misery. We learn this from Surah Taha, ayah 124 to 126. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا وَنَحْشُرُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَعْمَى. And whoever turns away from my remembrance, indeed he will have a depressed life. مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا, depressed life. And we will gather him on the day of resurrection as someone who is blind. He will be brought in the day of judgment as a blind person. And this person will ask, رَبِّ لِمَا حَشَرْتَنِي أَعْمَى? Why did you raise me up as blind? وَقَدْ كُنْتُ بَصِيرًا, well, I could see in the dunya. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, كَذَلِكَ أَتَتْكَ آيَاتُنَا فَنَسِيتَهَا. Our ayat came to you, but you forgot them. وَكَذَلِكَ الْيَوْمَ تُنْسَى. And today you will be forgotten. You forgot my ayat, you turned away from me, today I will turn away from you. Again, this does not mean that a person who turns away from the Quran, who does not do amal salih, he will be very poor. He will have many physical problems. He will become extremely ill. No, this is not what the meaning is. What does it mean? That a person will be unhappy. A person will live a life of fear. He will live a life of discontent. A life full of problems and misery. he will never be able to get over things. He will never be able to get over people whom he has lost, or things that he has lost, or the losses that he has incurred in the past. He will never be able to get over them. He is constantly destroying himself, eating himself up. This is a result of what? Turning away from the dhikr of Allah. And remember, dhikr of Allah does not just mean studying the Qur'an. It includes reciting the Qur'an. It includes praying the salah. It includes worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any person who turns away from that, he will have a difficult life. And a person who turns to Allah, he will have a good life. And we see this so common today, that people have so much money, but they're not satisfied. They are constantly greedy for more. A person has a house, he has one job, but he wants to move to a bigger house. He wants to get a better car. And all that he's concerned about all the time is paying the bills, paying the mortgages, working here, working there. This is taking the peace of their life away. Sometimes I wonder, people who spend so much time, so much effort in buying houses, for example, working day in and day out, what are they thinking? That eventually, how long will they live in that house? Just recently, someone was telling me that at their work, there's a woman who works with them who has been working at that place for about 40 years. A very long time she's been working over there. And she's extremely old, and she must retire at this point. And she lives alone, an old woman. No children live with her, no grandchildren live with her, no husband lives with her. She lives alone. And despite this extreme old age, she works every single day. Why? Because she has to pay her mortgage. When I heard that, I was like, okay, even if she buys the house, how long is she going to live there? How long? People don't think. They don't think long term. They're only thinking about some time. There's so much emphasis that is put on owning your own house, having money, having your own car, having paid your mortgage. Even when you do that, then what? How long will you live? How long will you enjoy this? You don't really meet your children who are going to inherit this house from you. What are you spending your life in? This is a life of misery. That a person is working day in and day out to do something that is not going to bring him any benefit at all. And if a person remembers that مَا عِنْدَكُمْ يَنْفَدْ وَمَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ بَاقٍ, then his priorities will be proper. Then he will have correct priorities. Then he will focus on the hereafter. Then he will realize that الْمَالُ وَالْبَنُونَ زِينَةُ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا, that the wealth and children, what are they? They're the zina of this life. وَالْبَاقِيَاتُ الصَّالِحَاتِ, but the enduring good deeds, what are they? خَيْرٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ ثَوَابًا, they are better in the sight of your Lord for reward. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards them. وَخَيْرٌ أَمَلًا, and better for one's hope. This is what one should hope for. Not the things of this dunya, but the reward of the hereafter. It is said that Ibn Abbas radhiyallahu anhu, he used to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allahumma qanni'ni bima razaqtani wa barik li fi. That, oh Allah, satisfy me, give me contentment in what you have provided me. Wa barik li fihi, and give me barakah in that. Make that enough for me. Make that sufficient for me. Make me content and happy with that. Because ultimately, no matter how much a person has, if he is not satisfied in his heart, the external things cannot bring him happiness. What brings him happiness? It's the inner happiness. It's the satisfaction that he has in his heart. So we should pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this satisfaction, for this contentment. Because if we have that, then we're the richest people of this world. And if we lack that, then we are the most unfortunate, miserable, and poor ones.